Hello. Can we start then? Are we ready to go? Oh, nice, nice. So welcome, Ellie and Maria Eduarda, also from Brazil. That's nice to be here with you. I'd like to welcome you here today. My name is Julia, also from Brazil. And I hope we have an insightful time here together. I also like to thank for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, the University of Notre Dame. I am very honored and also a little bit nervous, but everything will be fine. Oh, that's nice, Maria Eduarda, to hear. It's nice to be here with another Brazilian, really. Hope we can share our insights here together about this topic, well, that strongly moves me. So feel free to ask and to interrupt me at any time so we can have a dynamic presentation, okay? Either way, I reserved a few moments at the end so you can ask questions and we can chat. So let me start by putting here my sharing my screen with you. Let's see here. Whoops. Can you see it? Everything's okay? I will assume that, okay, nice, good. Thanks, Maria Eduarda. So, I will start my presentation by briefly presenting my research problem and the research question that, well, that moves me here today. After, I will explain what I perceive as the key points about Brazilian transitional justice. And at the end, I will share with you a series of practical questions that I think might be applied, depending on the context, during a circular process eventually held in Brazil. I hope that they can inspire you to work in your countries as well. So, about my research problem. My research focus is on the political transition from the dictatorship faced during the 60s, 70s, and 80s to the democracy that it is still struggling to consolidate in Brazil, from my perspective. The essence of this presentation lies in providing spaces for transformation by a methodology called peacemaking circles, to which we can resort in the case of severe human rights violations perpetrated by the authoritarian regime, so that truth about the historical period can come up and be welcomed. By doing this, I assume that we will be able to reconnect to our shared humanity and as a consequence to the notion of interdependence. And the question is, my research question is, how could peacemaking circles be used as a restorative practice for transitional justice in Brazil? And, well, the key points that I perceive are mainly two. The first one, to foster spaces to listen and share experiences so that truth of multiple voices and truth can emerge. Although Brazil implemented a truth commission, it had a different role. Its objective was to find out information, not listening and welcoming different experiences. From my perspective, it is important to foster spaces where different voices can be expressed with different truth. In this regard, in a quotation that moves me and strongly touches me, Lederach and Lederach conclude that social healing requires that the voices interact, interplay, and in the ideal of the ideals, give rise to moments of resonance. Then repeat again. From this view, and metaphorically speaking, social healing is made up of space moments of resonance, voices touching voices in common place. And from a narrative approach, Sarah Cobb teaches the same lesson when she says that violence fills up the spaces where words are not allowed. Following this assumption, if we are committed to healing, to transforming, and ultimately to breaking the violence cycle, We need to foster spaces where people are encouraged to speak up and resonate with each other. Listening to the stories is not necessarily agreeing with them. It is to embrace the narrative, the story, the pain, the discomfort, the things that perhaps we do not want to hear. Active listening means understanding where the person stands to have that perception. To foster spaces include listening to the voices of those who perpetrated violence, as systems theory asserts. The crucial point of systems theory to the analysis that I'm doing here is the relations. The behavior of each person inside a family or an institution depends on everybody else's behavior in a way that no component of a system is capable of unilaterally control the functioning of the other. This shows the interdependence of all the elements of the system. This is precisely the reason, this is precisely the reason why active listening to state agents becomes so relevant. To understand the relationship we need that all persons involved are in the field. As Prani, Stewart, and Wedge comment, to resolve crimes in ways that respect all interests and address deeper causes, we need the whole picture, yet no one person has it. By bringing together all those affected by a crime, circles provide the means for remedying this. And Cobb shows three main reasons for us to listen to the stories of those who perpetrated acts of violence in the name of the state. She sees them as critically important for reconciliation, and I tend to agree with her. In Cobb's words, first, they are the site from which we can see the emergence of the culture of violence. The victims can describe its effects, but they cannot account for its progression. Secondly, by humanizing the so-called perpetrators, we can analyze the violence perpetrated as a phenomenon, locating the evil in the culture of violence, not in one individual. This can enable us to better understand the structural violence that is still present in Brazilian society. Thirdly, in the words of Sarah Cobb, if they perpetrators are not humanized, the public sphere moves from one totalitarianizing narrative to another, without space from destabilizing subjectivity for public reflection, for uncertainty. This is the first key point that I perceive. We need to foster spaces to listen to different truth, to different voices, even the voices of those who perpetrated violence. I believe it is the only way we can transform this conflict in Brazilian society. And the second key point for me is to promote practices for accountability. In Brazil, we did not have trials to hold accountable the ones who committed violations of human rights during the civil-military dictatorship. Therefore, we did not have justice in the traditional concept of this word in modern times, which involves prosecutions, guilt, culpabilization, and trials. However, the point that I want to make here is quite larger than that. Not only we did not have trials, but also the ones who committed severe violations were not held accountable, neither through a lawsuit nor through another process. It is the experience of accountability that I would like to explore now. And for that, a new paradigm is needed to shift from retributive justice to a restorative or transformative one. As Luis Bravo, an insightful lawyer, restorative justice practitioner, and professor whom I have the privilege to accompany and be accompanied by in the peace studies journey, clarifies, the idea of justice delivered by a conviction and of peace achieved with the conclusion of the judicial procedure is an illusion to the extent that the relational dynamics end up not being addressed, leaving the conflict system open. In order to address the relational dynamics and to close the conflict system, a new paradigm is needed. I believe that as a society, we can use the restorative potential of other methodologies to experience justice, other than retributive justice. Therefore, what I propose is to approximate transitional justice to restorative justice. We need to seek responsabilization and healing. And therefore, if we want to move towards healing, the invitation is to widen our perception in the sense of being attentive to the complexity of life and the dimensions that need to be preserved. I call attention to the fact we are not only rational beings, but sexual, familial, emotional, communal, mental, societal, and spiritual beings. And this complexity must be considered in any conflict we are analyzing. The spaces for listening aim at offering a safe space to all these dimensions to come up to the public arena in an ambience free from judgments, with patience and openness to listen to all stories, by asking questions that encourage people to share personal stories. The accountability practices relate to judicial responsibilization through trials, but they go beyond that. What I intend to demonstrate is that the culpabilization logic is not enough to promote the experience of accountability. In order to foster accountability, it is crucial to incentivize practices that encourage those who committed violence to acknowledge the harm they caused, stimulating empathy and transforming the feeling of shame, as Zare teaches us. So, in practice, to apply restorative justice processes, we might face two main challenges, in Brazil at least. First, many people involved in the dictatorship are already dead or are too old. And second, there is a chance that the ones who are still alive do not want to meet. So how do we offer peacemaking circles, or how do we effectively put them into practice? In neither of those cases, there are still possibilities left for restorative processes to be done. First, a circular process only with people who suffered from acts of violence committed on behalf of the state, or only with people who perpetrated those acts. And second, a circular process between descendants of those who suffered and the ones who perpetrated abuses. As much as possible, all the dimensions of our humanity are present in a circular process. Our physical facet manifests itself by our simple presence, by attending it and being mindful that our body communicates as much as our verbal language. Regarding our mental layer, we are invited to remain open-minded, focusing on our values to guide our responses and reactions. Besides that, self-reflection is a necessary endeavor for everyone who decides to participate. One should always pay attention to thoughts and feelings and how to express them. Emotionally wise, all participants are invited to speak the truth from their hearts by being present with their feelings and sharing needs, hopes, and fears. Prentice, Stewart, and Wedge reminds us that crimes are highly charged experiences. Ignoring the emotional component hinders our ability to address deep-seated differences and to begin healing. Our spiritual layer is expressed through authentic levels of connection and also by the perception of our shared humanity. Engaging our wholeness opens us to a spiritual sense of each other. As we share what is inside us, we work through pain, despair, fear, joy, and hope together. And having these dimensions in mind, and as an attempt to address them, I would like to share with you possible questions that might be asked during a circle, whether it is only with those who committed violence, only with those who suffered from it, or their descendants. And this is, for me, the most important part of this presentation, because the questions that are proposed here are very different from the ones posed in our truth commissions here in Brazil. So, and I will pass them through, and then we can discuss if it makes sense to you. What is the story you most want us to know about yourself that best describes you? What were you fighting for during the period between 1964 and 1985? What is this value? What is your personal value, and why is this value important to you? What were you most fearful of at those times? What did you need the most? What were your thoughts and beliefs back then from 64 and 85? What did you say to your parents or children about your work? How do you feel today when you think about the acts you performed? Did you ever act against your values, afraid of not being accepted by the institution you belong to, or afraid of what your colleagues would say? How do the experiences lived between 64 and 85 impact your life today? Thinking about the impact that these experiences still have in your life, what would you say you need the most today to move on? How might your actions during the period between 64 and 85 have impacted the lives of other people? How, if at all, are you wounded? What does healing mean to you? What needs to be healed in your life and your relations? How can you support the healing process you are referring to for you and others? And what kind of support do you need from your community? What did you tell your parents or children about the violence you suffered? How do you feel today concerning what was experienced from 64 and 85? What were the strategies you adopted to cope with the situation, to experience power again, despite the power wounding? Even if it's not possible to heal 100% from the wounds, what needs to happen so that you feel they are more healed than before? What are you taking from this circle today that gives you support to heal your pain? What gives you hope? What do you cherish the most in your family, and why? What is the most beautiful memory you have with your relative? And what and the most painful one? When was the first time you discovered that your relative was involved in the dictatorship, whether as a state agent or someone who was resisting to it? How did you react? What did he or she tell you about his or her work? What do you remember about the time you spent with him or her? What is your most vivid memory? And what do you miss the most? How do you feel about the violence he or she committed or suffered? What have you learned from the stories you have heard today? So these are the main questions that are possible in a process like a peacemaking circle, and not really open when you are in a truth commission. And I believe these are crucial questions for us here in Brazil regarding the period we are living now, election period, and facing authoritarian views and in these courses since mid 2016, and there are many authors who say that our democracy is still struggling to consolidate. We still have the legacy of the dictatorial period living among us. And if the questions we asked so far didn't promote the change that we need, maybe we need to ask different questions. And this is what I am proposing here for you today. So I will stop my sharing my scripts here. And I would like to hear from you. What does it say this to you? What does it mean this to you? Does it make sense? What do you think may be the challenges that these questions face? What is the impact that this presentation has on you? Then, if we can open the mics for them, is it possible? Or if you'd like to just okay, or if you'd like just to write it down here on chat.
Do you want me to make the attendees panelists too, so that they can like see and talk? Would that be helpful? Okay.
Yes, that would be great if it's possible. And then we can have some minutes of a conversation, more intimate than a presentation. Okay.
I think I've done it, at least
Yes.
for people who've accepted it. Yeah.
Yeah, for Maria Eduarda, yes. So, hello. How does this topic impact you, Maria Eduarda?
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Hello. Can I report you?
Sorry?
Can I talk in Portuguese? Or in English is better?
I believe in English is better so that we all
Can
understand.
I talk in Portuguese or in English?
In English,
yes.
I believe it's better so that everyone can understand.
Oh, okay. Are you listening to me?
Yes.
I think the internet is not so good here. Hello, it's really nice to meet you. Congratulations for your presentation. I really love it. And I will say about Brazil. And I'm studying international relations at São Paulo State University, UNESCO. And I'm researching, scientific researcher in peace studies and gender studies. But I'm encouraged by the City of Joy, Restorative Center, that is for women that are survived from sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'm studying how this process that is encouraged by the City of Joy can contribute to the transformative process that is proposed by John Paul Lederach. And I'm studying this process, but I'm also part of the project University in Ação, Projeto Universidade em Ação. I don't know if you listen something about them. It's from UEPB, University of State of Paraíba. And we are studying cycles of peace, and we are studying culture of peace, education for peace in the with children. I think it's better to explain.
Okay.
And we are also talking about violence. And listen the story of people's children and their parents. We can see a lot of violence in all Brazil. Even the center or the big cities, just like São Paulo, and even the small cities, just like Tapiratiba, that is my city in Brazil. Thinking of, I don't know how to explain it in English. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
How to say what I'm thinking. But I had a question to you about your job.
Okay.
It's just like in this process,
I'm sorry.
working with the three paths, the inclusion, truthfully.
I didn't understand.
I say my question in the question.
No, there was an interference in the audio, but now I can listen. Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
My question is, how can we pass the inclusão to empathy and compassion? Como passar da inclusão para a compaixão para que aconteça um verdadeiro processo transformativo e restaurativo e que haja de fato uma verdadeira reconciliação? Qual é a dificuldade disso? Porque, desculpa se precisar traduzir aqui, eu acho que eu estou um pouco nervosa e o inglês está falhando, mas eu vejo a dificuldade de pensar apenas a inclusão é fácil. Vamos incluir homens e mulheres, vítimas e perpetradores. Mas como passar da inclusão para uma verdadeira compaixão, empatia? Porque é justamente com compaixão e empatia que a gente pode promover uma verdadeira reconciliação e transformação. De dentro que se exterioriza para fora. Entende?
Yes. I will answer in English, okay?
Yes.
And I don't have a final answer, actually. From what I understood, your question is, how do we pass from inclusion through compassion and empathy in process like this that are strongly violent? And that we have victims that are really traumatized and perpetrators who committed severe violations. How do we pass from an internal state of inclusion, or better said, from an external sense of inclusion to an internal sense of compassion and empathy? Is that it? Okay. So I don't really know. I don't have a final answer. But from this research, what I believe is, if we can put them together, or not together, but only those who committed or only those who suffered, okay, but together in sharing stories, this can change something internally, because we don't really connect from a mental layer. We connect in the level of the emotion. in the level of the feelings, of the really spiritual sense of being together. And from what I believe and from what I understood from this research, it is this sharing stories have a power that we still not, we didn't still incentivated here in Brazil. Because we are still facing the same questions that we faced back then, during the dictatorship. We are seeing it again, redesigned, remodeled, but the questions are the same. We are facing the same social challenges. We have a police that kills more than wars. So, in the level of sharing stories and sharing feelings and sharing fears and hopes, I believe we can shift from an externally inclusion society to an internal state of compassion. Because once you feel compassion for another human being, you cannot unfeel it. You already felt it. It's there with you. It's in your baggage, in your luggage. You cannot unfeel. And I don't know if that answers your question, or at least it gives you, or at least if it gives you some insight to move with this questioning, to explore this questioning. Because also something that I believe is not having a final answer is good, because it keeps us on the path of exploring. So keep going. That's what I would say to you. Keep going, keep asking these questions, and keep exploring what promotes internal compassion and empathy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, well, I don't know if you have another question or another comment you would like to make, Maria Eduarda or Ella. If you want, the floor is yours. We have still time to share a little bit. If not, that's fine as well. Ella, if you are there. Okay, nice, Dane. Thank you. He's trying to promote Ella to a panelist so that she can also speak. But I'm not sure if she's here. Yes, I've seen it. That's okay. So do you have, Maria Eduarda, another question or a comment you'd like to make about how does this topic impact you? No? Okay, that's fine. So Dane, I believe I will end this session here. I would like to thank you again for being here and for supporting this event and this session. And I will leave here my contact. Is that okay, Dane?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So if Maria Eduarda, you would like to send other questions or continue this conversation, feel free. It would be a pleasure.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I'll end the session.
Thank you.